Hey guys, it's Brendan Maynard with Whitetail Logic. I want to talk about a very, very important topic today, and it's one that a lot of landowners get wrong, and it ends up hurting their property from the start date all the way throughout the season just because they're not going about their tactics the right way. It's important to realize what scientific data and research has shown us about deer movement, and that's what I try to implement with all of my clients, with all of my designs, with all my improvements that I recommend for clients, is I want to base it off of something that's not just observation. Yes, observation is important. I think it does have a factor in different methods that you use on your property, but at the end of the day, our own opinion and our own perception can really conceive and really construe that data or those thoughts and really mess up reality from what our perception actually is. So I try to base, again, all my improvements, everything that I recommend, off of scientific research. And in this case, and in many cases, this research is done through GPS collars on white-tailed deer. Deer tend to increase their movement gradually from summer to fall to late fall, early winter, all the way up to the peak of the rut. Their movements, their amount of daylight movement that they are conducting, or actually their overall movement, steadily increases all the way to the peak of the rut to where it then gradually falls back off. So how can we use that to our advantage? Well, first of all, we need to get rid of all the gimmicks that we have in our heads for what persuades and affects deer movement. You know, there's been many studies out there on moon, barometric pressure, cold fronts, everything imaginable that you could think that would affect deer movement has not really had rock solid evidence to say, yes, this is going to happen when this weather event takes place, or when this moon phase happens, this is what's going to happen to your deer. Now, I'm not saying any tactics you've used in the past, and let's say you've had success, and actually consistent success, and not something you just think in your head is consistent, then yeah, keep going with that, because that's going to work for you, and that's obviously proven to work in the past, and you might as well keep rolling with that. But stop thinking that there's a way that deer move, and this is what controls their movement. Stop thinking that way, and actually base it off of results and observation, like I just said, I don't like to go off of, but actually be honest with yourself. You know, does this X actually affect deer movement? Why? Does it really have an effect on it? You know, something actually I struggle with personally is the data and the research done on cold fronts and how that affects deer movement. You know, every way and everything I base my hunting strategy off of is either through the breeding season or through those cold fronts. You know, that's when I like to hunt. There's been no research and no data that shows that those cold fronts actually increase deer movement, and that's hard for me even to say, because I still like to hunt those cold fronts, but for various different reasons. Let's say it actually doesn't increase deer movement, because, you know, I've had a lot of cold fronts where I go out there and hunt, and I'm like, God, this is going to be a really good night. It's a great cold front. You know, it's dropped 20 degrees since yesterday. The deer have to be moving, and then just the movement isn't there, and what I expected did not happen. So be honest with yourself and make sure that this consistency in your head, make sure that you're actually writing these observations down or going back and looking at it, and not just going off of, you know, a one-hit wonder. You know, this happened one time, so that means this is going to happen all the time. So I still like to hunt cold fronts, and the reasoning for that is really just for scent control. You know, whether the deer are moving more or not, we know, and research can tell us that scent travels and stays in an area a lot more in warm, humid weather. So obviously the exact opposite of that is those dry, cold weather, and that's when that scent does not travel as far and stay in the air as long, and you can get away with a lot more. So that's why I like to hunt those cold fronts. You know, when you have those cold fronts that bring in this heavy wet snow, let's say, you can actually expect your scent to almost increase that day, and your scent residue that stays in your area and accumulates throughout the hunt is actually going to stay quite persistent during that type of weather event. So again, those dry, cold fronts is really what we're looking for to decrease that scent. So I'm getting a little bit off topic here. Again, we're talking about early season strategy. You know, when to hunt, why you're hunting, and what location on your property to hunt. This is where a lot of people go wrong, because they are so excited that October 1st is here, or wherever you're hunting, whenever your start date is. It's finally here. You've been waiting all summer. You've been putting in all this work, putting in the food sources, and now it's time to go hunt. And you hunt every single moment you get. You hunt your best spots, and you sit them, even, let's say, if it's not ideal conditions, whether that's a cold front or whether that's the proper wind direction. I've said it I think every single video I've done, I've said it in. Hunting pressure has a huge impact on deer movement. Making sure you're really picking out the precise times you want to hunt and the precise locations can make this season, the entire season as a whole, a lot more successful rather than just that one hit wonder, that one set where you're going for gold, you're putting it all in. That is a risky decision, especially when you're hunting small private land, not a lot of acres. You cannot afford to do that many times throughout the season. You will ruin your property and it will become nocturnal. So when are we hunting early season on our farm? Number one, if we're deciding to take out doe, which we will figure out here in our assessment, our trail camera assessment from September 15th, I run all the way to October 1st. We're gonna figure out, do we need to take doe? How many do we need to take? And then that's a time early season. Well, get that done, get it out of the way. Again, getting those doe out early. What's that gonna do? Well, first of all, it's gonna make a lot more competitive breeding season because there's a lot less mature doe to go out and breed. So these bucks are going to be searching a lot harder to find those doe, and they're not going to be just hopping up from one after they breed her, heading right to the next, and don't have to travel and look very hard for that next doe. Now, I'm not saying clear your property full of doe. You do need doe, obviously, in order to attract those bucks, but again, creating that balance, trying to get it as close to a 1-to-1 ratio as possible on your property is going to create the best results in the most eventful rut come the beginning of November. So there's a number one. Doe harvest, get them out of the way early. It's going to also conserve food for you. All these food sources out here are going to now go towards the remaining deer on your property, and it's going to make them that much more healthy, that much bigger bodies, and eventually, over the course of many years, you're now creating bigger antlers because you've created all this nutrition, and now you're concentrating it toward a select few of deer. You're not feeding the entire neighborhood 50 to 100 deer and thinking that you're going to grow booners out there. It's just not going to happen. They're all scavenging for food. They're scrounging to get by. They're not going to be healthy. Their body weights are going to be low, and their antler sizes aren't going to have the quality as compared to an area that has the proper population. So conserving that food and also the eventful rut. That is why I'm taking those doe out early. Again, trying to get to that 1-to-1 ratio. Whatever my camera assessments tell me is what I want to use. Also, I forget the guy's name. I'm gonna throw this in here quick. If you looked at any of my social media pages, I posted about it recently. But there's a guy in Michigan. I apologize, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. He did a study on 30,000 acres, a farm that he managed, and he found that young doe, so 2.5 and younger, and I might get these numbers a little bit mixed up, but 2.5 and younger are going to be breeding on average about 70-80% buck fawns. Okay, when that age and that doe reaches 3.5, it's about that 50-50 that we hear people say. They're dropping about 50-50 doe fawns to buck fawns. As they reach 4.5 and 5.5 and above, they're actually dropping usually to doe fawns. Now, why does that impact our decisions that we're making on our property? Well, if you've got an abundant population, you've got too many deer on your property, your food sources and your habitat is getting destroyed. Taking into account the amount that you're offering the deer. You cannot expect to plant an acre food plot in a big wood setting and expect that to grow. I don't care how many deer you have. If it's going to get eaten down, it's not because you have too many deer. It's just because your habitat is not of the quality to where you're actually going to be able to feed that amount of deer off of that small of a food source. So again, if we have an abundant population, we would want to take out those mature doe because they're the ones that are going to be breeding the most fawns and the most reproductive deer in the future. So by killing those mature doe, we're going to do a better job of suppressing and getting that population down to the size that we want. If you want more bucks, kill more mature doe. But again, this is site specific. Not every place needs to kill doe. Not every place needs to let doe go. It's just site specific. Having either a consultant out or a wildlife biologist to come out to your property and assess it and really grasp the concept of what is your issue. Do you have too many deer, or do you have such poor quality habitat that the deer just can't survive anyways, and it looks like they're devastating the wilderness or your food plots? But really, at the end of the day, you just need to increase that that habitat. Everything I base my recommendations off, I really try to think about it logically. And whether that study is true or not, and I haven't heard of many people looking into that, so that's all I have to go off of, but think about this logically. Let's just role reverse it. Why in the world, in nature, would a young doe drop 2 doe fawns when she can barely survive herself? She's not proven the test of time. She's not survived the test of time. She's been through no harsh winters, maybe one at most. She's going to be a lot less likely to take care of those 2 doe and make them healthy compared to that 4.5, 5.5-year-old doe that has been through a couple harsh winters, and she has survived them, and she has an amazing resilience to nature. So again, just think about this logically. Of course, that older doe is most likely going to be dropping doubles, twin doe fawns, rather than, again, those younger ones. Now, the second reason I would hunt early season would be because I have a mature buck that I'm targeting consistently on camera. When I say consistently, I don't want sporadic pictures of him once every 2 weeks, once every week. I want a picture of him once every 2 to 3 days at maximum, to really hone in on his area and make sure that I'm giving myself the best opportunity to actually go in there and risk ruining my property. I want to make sure that it's worth it and that the actual probability of him coming out is there. Early season is a great time to have them in their consistent daylight movement, where they're consistently in their feeding patterns, and as they start to break out of their bachelor groups, that movement's going to change. So if you have that buck early season consistently moving around your property, get in there and hunt him ASAP, but make sure, again, you're using your wind to your advantage and making sure that you're still worrying about your access. You know, I don't want to make this sound like this is a go big or go home hunt, because it's early in the year. I'm never going to do that early go big or go home hunt. I'm still picking away at this deer. I'm still taking my chances where I can take them and not pressuring him to where I'm going to ruin him for future events or for future opportunities. So get in there early if he's consistently moving around your property. And it's got to be daylight. Don't tell me he's on your food source, you know, every single night, but it's an hour or 2 hours past daylight. What does that help us? Yeah, he might be there, but let me tell you what, that deer's not bedded off to the side of the food source waiting to come into your food plot before 2 hours after dark or 2 hours after daylight. He's quite a ways away. So don't go in there, don't pressure him, and do not educate the deer herd when your opportunities and your probability of you harvesting your deer aren't there. Making sure that you're hunting, again, your optimal times is very important. The last way I'm going to hunt early season is going to be from an observational stand. We have a couple of them, mainly the one over on our other meadow here, that is really an area where we're set far off the food source to where we can get in and out of it without spooking deer, and to where really it's a good rifle setup. Why would I hunt that during the early season? Well, let's just say possibly my cameras, the multiple cameras we have on this property, aren't getting that movement of that mature buck, which, again, I don't really believe in. You know, if you've got a deer living on your property, you've got enough adequate amount of cameras out there and you've defined their movement, you're going to have him on camera if he's living there consistently. Do I think a deer can go through your property once, twice, 3 times without getting on camera? Definitely. But again, that's just hard to hunt, and it's something that I'm not going to go after until we get closer again to that breeding season, as those movements start to increase, that daylight movement starts to increase. So hunting those observational stands, taking any intel that you've got out of those, and making sure you're taking all your camera data, looking to where the deer are moving, what time of day, really trying to figure out where they are on your property. That, at the end of the day, is going to give you the most success. And those are the only 3 times that I'm ever going to hunt early season. I'm never going to pressure an area. I'm never going to go to one of our all-out stands, you know, go big or go home stands. It's just not worth it early season. The movement's not there. The scent is traveling and staying in the air for a lot longer just because of the warm weather. It's just not worth it. Making sure you're taking these opportunities and go after the bucks that are consistent. And if they're not on your property, or if you're not harvesting doe, then guess what? Take a step back. Don't go and ruin the property that you spent so much time and effort and money and work to create, because you will ruin it, and you'll ruin it fast. And don't think hunting pressure, that's not just defined by you sitting in the tree stand. That's defined by any single human presence on your property. Whether that's driving a four-wheeler around your destination food sources, I don't care if it's in the middle of the day. That is hunting pressure. Deer will know you're there, especially if you have your property set up to where it has adjacent cover directly to the side of your food sources. They'll know they will know you are there. This is meticulous, this takes time, this takes effort, And if you want to be successful year in and year out, you need to take this advice and really get going this season and making sure you're hunting smart to give yourself the best opportunity to harvest that target buck on your property. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Whitetail Logic. Be sure to reach out if you want us out to your property. We're going to start doing a lot more of the implementation work for our clients, just so that they're really getting the full one-on-one experience and making sure they're understanding what we're talking about. You know, you only can do so much when you're trying to write directions down on a piece of paper or create a habitat video. You only can try to explain things so much, and the way people perceive that and take that in can be different depending on what client it is. So making sure that I'm actually going out there hands-on and actually showing them what I want. You know, in the past we've just been plan specific, just going out and doing an on-site consultation, giving them a written plan, and then having them develop and do that work themselves, which a lot of clients love to do that, and that's awesome. But for the clients that aren't confident in what I'm giving them and they're not totally understanding and grasping what I'm giving them, we're going to start to do a lot more hands-on work to make sure that they're getting the most out of our consultation and making sure that they're successful for years to come.